WNST week as we get ready for opening day. And, of course, we're going to be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry with Caps head coach Barry Trotz. All of that brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. You need Fremont Mortgage, and you need to be out with us with head coach Barry Trotz after opening day on the 29th for some hockey. I tell you what, I'm hoping UMBC can pull this thing through. They are the toast of the town here this week as we get ready for their big matchup on Friday night against Virginia. This guy has not talked college basketball with me in quite some time, but it's always a pleasure to make his acquaintance. He is the longtime, former now CEO of Five Star Camp in basketball, now doing that bracket show at SB Nation and doing some radio and scouting college basketball and watching college basketball and coaches and probably watching this FBI investigation as much as everything else. We welcome Leigh Klein back onto the program. You can find him at Leigh Allen Klein out on Twitter. UMBC, that's all we got around here, Leigh. It's been a rough one for the locals this year, bracketology.
Well, it's been an incredible job by Ryan Odom taking the UMBC program and now vaulting it towards the top of the America East. Top four finish last year, now beating Vermont in Vermont, an incredible feat. And so anything from here on from UMBC is gravy. Could they be the first 16 seed to beat a one? Not sure, but I'll tell you this, they got a good coach there at UMBC, and the future is bright.
Well, you know, when you talk about Virginia and slaying the big teams here, and we'll start talking about them and the Villanovas and the Xaviers and anyone of all the things they could have drawn, as a program, you knew they were going to be a 16 seed. You knew you're going to see a 1 seed. I thought maybe they'd get sent to Pittsburgh and play Villanova, but I thought it made more sense for them to go south and see Virginia. And certainly from a local standpoint, I think it's a great celebration for the program and a chance to hang in with Virginia on Friday night, late night, and not be the cutaway game, but be the game that's 6 points with 10 minutes left to go or something.
Absolutely. And if you remember, Ryan's father, Dave Odom, was a longtime assistant for Terry Holland at Virginia and was part of the staff that made it to the Final Four, that Virginia team that went down to Seattle. So it's always funny how the selection committee has those sort of overtures and puts these things together. So I thought that was funny. But I do think, again, UMBC will be prepared, and I think that they'll be in the mud. They'll be in the mud scrapping with Virginia, and hopefully with a couple of breaks and hit a couple of shots, they can hang in, and who knows.
Well, we had Coppin around here as a 15 taking down South Carolina many moons ago, now 21 years ago with Fang Mitchell. The notion of a 16 ever beating a 1, I guess you never say never, but you live for that day, right? I mean, a lot of people thought 15s would never be 2s. We've seen the sport become a lot more condensed over the last 30 years. At some point, somebody, somewhere, the chaminade is going to happen on a certain Thursday or a Friday, right?
I think it's inevitable. I did see somewhere, again, now it's amazing how March Madness has become, with the numbers guys and everything, they can figure out the percentages. Apparently, Penn, who's playing Kansas as a 16 seed, has as good an odds of a 16 beating a 1 from these math guys. Like, they've got a 5% chance, which apparently is an incredible number for a 16 seed against a 1.
Well, I go to my Smokey and the Bandit and say it ain't never been done because we ain't never done it, but we'll see how UMBC fares against Virginia. A lot of bracketology, Leigh, on mid-majors getting screwed, and obviously when that ball goes in and Jarris Lyles, drains that shot and breaks Vermont's heart, obviously for all the smaller conferences, the tournament's not the, everything. It's the only thing that matters against a season where you play 30, 35 games. I don't know that that's ever going to change, and I think the pressure and the money at the top that bears down on these mid-majors and smaller schools and mid-majors that have success can't get the games that they want to get their RPI where it needs to be. Is that ever going to change? I mean, there's no one playing God here. Money plays God in the NCAA, right?
I think what we're seeing is a further and further divide between the top and everyone else. And so when we talk about, the reality, when it went to this quadrant one system, it further enhanced the opportunities for the power conference teams and make it that much more difficult for the mid-majors. I mean, you're almost to the point where the mid-majors, they're better off not playing their conference tournaments and just play regular season, because that's the only way you're going to ensure the best teams. In some cases, I'm not sure how financially well these conference tournaments do. I mean, I was watching Conference USA in an incredibly interesting setup playing at the Star in Frisco, and it looked like there was practically nobody in the stands. There was like one stand of fans. I kept saying to myself, well, I'm thinking about Middle Tennessee, which of course got knocked off, and Marshall ended up winning that.
But that's also the case this week with these bracket games on Thursday and Friday. I mean, I've been to these tournament games a lot over 30 years, and there's a lot of loneliness going on at 9:30 at night, where there will be 4,200 Virginia fans, 1,800 UMBC fans, and 15,000 empty seats in Charlotte, because that's kind of the way that the tournaments all are. And I would agree with you with the conference tournaments. I mean, they tried the CAA tournament here in Baltimore for a couple of years. It didn't work. There are very few places where everybody wants to run off to. And, I mean, even the A10 tournament being played down in D.C. over the weekend, the Big Ten tournament being played up at the Garden last week, I think there's a real malaise about the travel part of, I'm going to go run off and my team might get beat on Thursday afternoon.
So the Big Ten fared well here in New York because you don't realize the incredible alumni base that's living here. The Michigan, the Wisconsin, the Indiana. I mean, there's just huge alumni bases in these giant state schools that are living in New York. So the Garden was rocking and it was packed. But again, I mean, I was wondering, Atlantic 10 in D.C., especially GW, not really doing great. The Richmond school, Richmond, VCU, not doing great. I'm thinking, what type of crowd can they really have there? And, when it's all said and done, are you helping your conference out, right? Are you helping your conference out when you have the upset to the conference tournament in front of 2,000 people, where the body of work of what the team did over 32 games goes for naught? So that's just a small thing that what mid-majors can do. The reality is they have very little control. They can play in these tournaments and spend a lot of money to try to get an opportunity against some high major teams. They could travel, they could do that, but the deck is stacked against them for their at-large future in the NCAA tournament.
You can find Leigh Klein's work out on Twitter at Leigh Allen Klein, as well as at SB Nation and That Bracket Show. Now that the brackets are released, great to have Leigh on the line here and do a little bit of bracketology above and beyond UMBC in their Friday night pilgrimage down to Charlotte to take on the Hoos of Virginia and a 1 seed. Always intrigue in these 5-12s and these 7-10s. I mean, obviously the Clemson-New Mexico State game getting some traction. People wondering about South Dakota State as well as the Rhode Island-Oklahoma game. Any of these games stand out to you? I mean, do you have a 13 seed? Do you have a Charleston giving Auburn a hard time anywhere in your brackets, Leigh?
I do, and I think, again, that you get sort of caught up. I mean, you look at the numbers you see pretty much every year. A 12 beats a 5, a 13 beats a 4, just about every other year. So it becomes, trendy, as well as we know the margin is smaller and smaller. So I did pick Charleston. I've had like 3 kind of big reaches in the first round. South Dakota State is one of my reaches. College of Charleston playing against a depleted Auburn team is another. And I think Loyola could beat Miami. I think Miami also sort of a thin team a little bit as far as their scores. And then for Sweet 16 possibles, I do like the play-in game winner in this, which I think will be UCLA. I like usually one of these play-in winners getting onto a roll, and you blink, and they're, not only do they win the play-in, they win the opening game, and they could even go down to the Sweet 16. So I think UCLA, granted, not easy, they could be a team that finds their way to win a couple games here.
Big Ten and where Maryland sits in this whole thing, Lee. Obviously, only 4 entries in, and the Penn States and the Nebraskas can sit it out, and even for Purdue to be probably getting in Arkansas the second game, and the notion of Michigan State and what they've been through on and off the court this year. The Big Ten's down, right? And I think it's reflected in where Maryland sits in all of this to say, well, the conference has been disrespected, and Maryland didn't perform particularly well. I think we're all a little concerned about the Terrapins around here.
Well, I think there's kind of two sides to this with the Big Ten. On the front side is that it's hard to believe that there's only 4 Big Ten teams in, and you're talking about like 9 in the ECC, which, to be honest with you, I just think it's a joke that there seems to be a continual bias to the ACC when it comes down to selections. Nebraska, Penn State clearly could be in over Syracuse. They're as good, when you think of like NC State, Syracuse, and that part. The Big Ten's right there when you talk about those teams. It was a down year for the conference because let's be honest. Maryland had their injuries, never got out of the gates, and Indiana and Wisconsin were down. And so that's where you were in this situation that I imagine if Indiana or Wisconsin were in that situation of Penn State and Nebraska, they're probably in because of their name, the value of the brand.
Right.
The brand. And but Big Ten will be back now. You got to give an opportunity for some of these guys to load up. I think that Illinois is going to get better. I know Indiana's going to get better, so I think these teams are going to get better. In the bottom, I mean, we saw Rutgers here beat Indiana. We saw Rutgers beat Minnesota. Rutgers will be better as well. So
well, don't let me cry for Penn State, but Penn State has gotten better, and this would have been that entree for them. And again, I'm not going to make any excuses for Penn State. I live in Maryland. I watched us get our ass kicked in football for 30 years by them. So not to mention the Paterno and the Sandusky scandal. So I don't make any excuses, but to me, you almost want to give a nod to a program that's moving in that direction to allow them to go in and be a part of this thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we get back to this scenario. For the first time that I can remember, teams that played well in November really received a lot of benefit from that when we think and look at Oklahoma and Arizona State being in this field who played awful down the stretch. And this year they treat everything. Those November wins were as valuable, if not more, than the February wins. And so it's just, and so a good team like Penn State who played well late, that, played without one of their key players in the last couple, played without Watkins the last couple of games, and they got left home. And so, just the way it goes. I mean, to give you an idea, Arizona State at 20-11, who was the toast of everything in December. Here's a team that lost 5 out of the last 6 games. Their only win at home against California. It's just incredible when you think about what. But they got the benefit of a November win against Xavier and December 10th win against Kansas, and that carried them.
He is Leigh Klein. He is Lee Allen Klein, ALANKLEIN, out on Twitter. You can find him also at That Bracket Show and SB Nation. Last thing for you on this, and this is for the not in the tournament, the NIT and the Terps. You have so many friends in basketball, and you're the least front runner of all of this because for every Ryan Odom that gets in the tournament, there's a Mark Turgeon and another dozen Pat Scaries that don't and are waiting NIT bids. The value of the NIT at this point for the coaches, for the players, for the programs, for the brands that don't make it, they wake up crying in their beer on Monday and wind up getting this NIT bid. Is there any benefit to the Terps winning 3 or 4 games here and playing a little extra basketball this year, Leigh?
I think it's good for the kids. If it's about the kids, which the NCAA keeps telling us, I do think that postseason basketball is good for the kids. It's good for the teams to give this opportunity for young guys to sort of continue their ascension up and give them an opportunity to play. Seniors and guys that are going to be playing elsewhere, give them an opportunity to play on a big stage. So I do think there's value in it, absolutely. But it's certainly not what it was, the NIT back in the day, as they continue to expand the tournament, which was once a 32-team tournament, which allowed the NIT to have some really good teams and competitive teams. Now, at 68 teams, the NIT, an afterthought, but it's still a positive for the kids to be able to play, to have this experience. And we've seen usually teams that go through and fare well in the NIT use it as a platform the next year to be in the NCAA. And it helps the brand of that team for the next year's consideration for the NCAA.
And what does it say if you're Maryland and you don't get invited to the NIT?
It means that in some cases, the big schools, they turn it down anyway, that they're not, because it's less of, the expectations are so much higher. They feel that their fans aren't going to travel. The fans are going to be apathetic to it. And so that's why you see some of the bigger schools either pass or be left out of the NIT because they're afraid that the NIT wants to, it's about audience and about money, and they're afraid that a big school might be apathetic and not show.
Well, it's always fun to go to the Garden and play. Terps made that trip up there 2 weeks ago. Didn't do too well in their endeavors against Wisconsin. Who's going to win this tournament, Leigh?
The way that the brackets shake out, I think Michigan has a really good path to win this whole thing.
Really?
I do. I think that they have, a bracket of least resistance in a way. So I'm not a big believer in Xavier. I mean, they've had a great year. I think Gonzaga is a little, is probably a little underseeded as a 4. But for Michigan, I don't believe Carolina is going to have. I saw Carolina play here in New York at Barclays Center, and I saw them dissect Duke in a terrific game. But I don't see top level talent on this Carolina team. There's no pros like there used to be. It's just a team that's deep, that plays with an incredible pace. I think Michigan's got a great pathway into the Final Four. And from there, anything can happen. So I put Michigan as my champion.
Bullish on the Big Ten you are, Leigh Klein. Hey, great to have you on. We'll send everybody out to SB Nation to follow your bracket show. And we appreciate the time. We'll be seeing you out on Twitter and watching a lot of basketball this weekend. I'm all stocked up on beer and wings.
It should be an awesome 3-week stretch. Really looking forward to it.
Appreciate you. If you want to stock up on some wings, you need to get over to Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. The tasty coffee. Make sure you're downloading the ROFO app when you're pumping your gas. It will save you dough, as well as you get those points. You can use that on fried chicken as well as Western fries that are so tasty at Royal Farms. Also, all of our programming as well as our community and our Be More Positive series brought to you by Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to be the best at everything they do. Branches now throughout Baltimore and Maryland. Go to howardbank.com and learn more about how they're empowered to help you. Also, Cole Roofing. We all felt that March wind blowing in on our roof. If you've got a commercial roofing space, the wind got to your roof a little bit. They want to get it looked at by our friends at Cole Roofing. Go out to coleroofing.com and learn more there as well. I'll be getting some pizza pie as well as some cheesesteaks from our friends at Pizza John's down in Essex this week. My mom's favorite, my wife's favorite. 50 years now on Back River Neck Road. Get on down to Essex and find out what all the fuss is about with that special pepperoni. Luke likes the meat sauce. I go for the regular sauce. I'm straight in, man. Green pepper, mushroom, sausage, and pepperoni. That's the way I roll. Pizza John's down at Back River Neck Road. Get the fuss. 50 years. It's delicious. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget anything you missed here, including our rock and roll interviews with Rob Halford from Judas Priest, John Corabi from the Dead Daisies, up in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. You can download the TuneIn Radio app and listen live from anywhere in the world. It's all brought to you by our friends at buyatoyota.com. Last but never least, the morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox at 7 a.m. with all the breaking news, all the views, all of our programming at WNST.net, including the entries for Laurel now and the Maryland Jockey Club in our morning newspaper. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. $1 down, $10 a month, never any commitment. It is PlanetFitness.com for you. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We stream live right here on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.